Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today, I'm joined by Joey Langenbrunner. He's the Chief Sales Officer of El Salvador CIP. He's the Deputy Representative of Liberland, a breakaway sovereign state. And in this episode, we're going to talk a lot about second citizenship in El Salvador. We're going to talk about breakaway sovereign states. We're going to talk about residency and citizenship through Bitcoin investment, citizenship diversification. So, we're going to talk a lot about topics around international diversification. If this is interesting to you, then stay tuned. This is going to be a really action packed episode. Joey, how's it going, man?
Hey Vance, thank you so much for letting me on this, man. Your Twitter is absolute fire, so it's honestly like a privilege to be here.
Thank you, man. I definitely appreciate that. And it seems like these days most of our guests do come from Twitter. And yeah, when I saw what you were up to, I'm like, I have to have this guy on. He's just doing too much stuff, both in Latin America and in Europe as well. So you definitely have your bases covered.
Awesome, man.
So I'll kick it off with a question. Um, in your bio, the last part of your bio says burn the boats. What does burn the boats mean?
So there is this Spanish conquistador. His name was Hernando Cortez, and when he landed in the New World, he told his men to essentially burn the boats, meaning you're not going back. We came here to do a job, and we're not going back until we finish. We're going to build our own boats. We're going to get our own wealth, and that's the only way that we're going back. So essentially, when we're doing burn the boats, when let's say you're living in the U.S. or Germany or Canada or Australia or any of these like super like developed countries, and it was going well for so long, and then COVID hit, and then this hit, and then just you don't feel like this is really the place for you anymore. You just got to burn the boats, go find some place that treats you better, and just cut ties and just move on. It's just one of those things that people have been doing for like generations. My mother has done it. A lot of families have done it. This is just like essentially the natural order of things. And so, part of the boats, could be many things as just like selling your home, selling your car, getting a job where you can work remote. Is probably the most important thing. But it's just burn the boats, man. Just as soon as you find like a different country, a new place to live, you know, don't go back. You have to really settle in, you know, learn your surroundings, learn the language, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a little dramatic, but
Love
just
it. I
really want
love
to
it.
put an emphasis of just, like don't go back, don't give up, like just cut all ties, you know. Of course you might have family home or something like that, but you might go back then, but you know, just you got to really, really dedicate because I see too many people on Twitter just talking about it, wanting to do it, and it's just like no, just like if you go do it, don't go back.
I love it. So I do want to learn a bit more about you as a person, Joey, but I want to come back to that after. And first, I just want people to understand what it is that you do. So you're the chief sales officer at El Salvador CIP. You guys are an official government immigration firm, like I guess what's the word? Allowed by the government of El Salvador, certified. So why don't you start off with telling us a little bit about what you have going on in El Salvador?
Yeah, so let me just back up a little bit, and then tell you why I started that, and then kind of
Sure.
why we're doing this. So ever since 2016, I found out about, let's say, like Bitcoin, and I started working for like a Bitcoin ATM on my company at that time, and I still could do some consulting for like Bitcoin like ATM companies actually. But I got involved with Bitcoin and really just kind of went down the rabbit hole and was just completely obsessed with blockchain and like decentralization. It's just like,
Hmm.
oh, this is a way that we can secure freedom, blah blah blah. You've heard this a million times, and really And when I saw that you have, companies like MicroStrategy, with Michael Saylor starting to buy Bitcoin, and all these companies are starting to put Bitcoin on your balance sheet, I'm like, okay, that's cool. What's the next step? And then, of course, like there's Liberland, and we'll get into that, a bit later. But when El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, this was crazy because not only is this like risky as hell, it's just like such a crazy like experiment, but it was just absolutely insane. So once that happened, I flew there, and as soon as I landed, there was like a Bitcoin ATM company, or sorry, like a Bitcoin ATM, there, right there at the airport. A bunch of like Bitcoin advertisements, and then you travel throughout uh, El Salvador. You go to Bitcoin Beach. I went to an event with like Max Kaiser and Stacy Herbert. If you know them, they're kind of
Hmm.
like big
Yep.
like Bitcoin
Yep.
influencers.
Yep.
Cool people, little bit crazy, but like that's their style. And then just being able to just pay for things with Bitcoin, stuff like that. And then there was this big event where the president, essentially announced like Bitcoin City, where they're going to build like this like SEZ zone, which SEZ stands for like special economic zones. Basically, it's like their own like jurisdiction, sets their own rules. So like this whole Bitcoin City with like no taxes and stuff like that. I was like, okay, that's cool. And then he's like, also, hey, we're going to sell, the passport for 3 Bitcoin or whatever. And just I was like, boom, opportunity. And at this point, I'm trying to trying to work towards like second passports, get residencies, but I really wanted to find a niche in this whole like passports and like residencies, industry. And so I had a really good friend down there in El Salvador who just happened to be our Liberland rep in El Salvador. And I pitched him on the idea, and he said, "Great." And so we started the company, got everything together, and and then we're just waiting. We're waiting, and we're still waiting for like this passport law to become legal. But in the meantime, we've started to look at other opportunities in El Salvador because we've seen like a lot of interest. So El Salvador CIP,
Hmm.
the main intent was to sell their passport. We're still waiting on that. So in the meantime, what we've been doing and what we have been promoting is just really the idea of just moving down to El Salvador, trying to sell like this dream. You can go to Bitcoin Beach. You could pay for things in Bitcoin. You could go buy your margarita. You can go buy your tacos, pay your rent, blah, blah, blah with Bitcoin.
Hmm.
This is everything that people in the Bitcoin community have been talking about for, more than 10 years now. And it's a real thing now. But people are still just, hanging out in the US, hanging out in the UK, hanging out in Canada, still talking about this Bitcoin dream. And I'm like, hey, this is real, guys. And so we started offering, like different, like residency packages. So of course we have like a digital nomad visa, which is called like a rentista. So if you at least make like $1,460, which is like basically one of the cheapest for like a nomad, with
Hmm.
how much income you make a month. And then we have like different ways where you can set up businesses,
Hmm.
work for like let's say like a CEO
Yeah.
of a
So there's
company
lots
or
of
something.
ways. There's like 10 plus ways. Sorry to cut you off, but when you
Please.
say we, who is working behind the scenes on this?
Right, right. So my partner, who's down in El Salvador, he is our Liberland rep. He was the one that was able to just essentially help start the business and everything like that, and we're equal partners. So he's
Okay.
essentially handing.
So there's like a strong like Liberland El Salvador connection going on.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We've met with people in the government there and everything like that. And that's a whole nother story.
Okay. And
Uh,
because I think most people will be unfamiliar with Liberland unless you're a super, citizenship nerd like we are. So could you just break that down real quick? Because I think we will keep mentioning it.
Yeah, sure. So, all right. So Liberland is essentially, so it's not exactly a breakaway state. It's basically this land that we found that was unclaimed. So back in 2015, that was in between Serbia and Croatia. It's about 7 square kilometers, which isn't like crazy big, but it's like 2.5 times the size of Monaco, and it's about basically the same size as like Gibraltar. So it's a decent size where you can essentially build, a small city. But essentially, we're claiming this land, and we're going around and we're lobbying different, like different governments to essentially like recognize us. So anytime I mention, I'm like Liberland, this is what I'm talking about. So it's basically just like a small little territory that we claimed a little over 7 years ago in between Croatia and Serbia.
And were you like kind of part of the founding of that?
Founding, no, but I did get involved about like 2 years afterwards. So
Hmm.
been involved like since like 2017, but the country was founded in 2015. So been around
Gotcha.
for a while.
And to make it more visual, from what I understand, so Serbia and Croatia, there's a river running through the middle of these countries, and then there's like an island that formed where the river kind of split in two, and then neither country really like claimed the island due to, I don't know, the breakup of the USSR or Czechoslovakia. I have no idea. And then you guys found like a cool loophole.
Yeah, yeah, right. So so it was actually Yugoslavia, because it's in the Balkans. So when
Hmm.
Yugoslavia like broke up, you had all these countries that kind of broke up, and like they're still dealing with border issues still to this day. And and I- and it's quite funny because like all the border issues are like all with Croatia. So like Croatia has border issues with Slovenia. They have border issues with Italy. They have border issues with Bosnia. They have border issues with Serbia, and they have border issues with us as well. And so like they're the ones that are kind of, let's say, hard to deal with, while like Serbia is like pretty easily to deal with because I'm currently based in Belgrade because we were doing some like Liberland activities here and whatnot. So yeah,
Yeah, so it was declared terra nullius, a no
yes,
man's land.
yeah. So basically, no country has claimed it due to like some weird border dispute and treaty that was signed like way back in the day and stuff like that. So, which I can briefly go into this.
Hmm.
So historically, so we're talking about the Danube River. So if you guys want to pull up a map, zoom into the Balkans, find the small border between Serbia and Croatia, and you see like the Danube River. If you're in the west, then you'll see the border essentially just like not following the river at all. It's just like these weird things, and it just like doesn't make any sense. Well, most borders will just follow on like rivers, but this border does not. And you got to ask yourself why. The reason is because you are seeing what Croatia claims. Now, Croatia is more Western influenced, while Serbia is more Eastern influenced. So, if you're like in the US or Canada or anywhere in the West, you're going to see the claim of Croatia. So, so essentially, that border, since it doesn't follow what the Danube River is today, is what the Danube River used to be back in the day. But it's not anymore because this is going to be a little bit more of a history lesson for you guys. That area actually used to be under control of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and during that time, they changed the flow of the river to essentially make it easier for trade. Because you got, like Vienna, Bratislava, Belgrade, and so many big cities on this river. So they changed the flow of the river, and that actually gave more territory to Serbia. So when Yugoslavia broke up, and essentially you now have these two countries there, Serbia and Croatia. Now they're trying to determine where the border is, and the treaty they signed is saying that the border is where the river is. And so Croatia says, well, the river used to be over here, which gives them more land. And the Serbia says, no, it's where the river is currently, which then gives them more land. But there's extra land on the east bank of the river. And sorry if this is like kind of confusing, but
No, I get it, and no one claimed it because it would have like messed up their larger claim, and so they're kind of like, we don't want this small piece because it sort of like negates our like larger claim to whatever who's on what side of the river.
right, it's
Something
like
like
this
that.
like weird thing. I mean, I'm sure, if you guys got like some like nerds out there, they can kind of, research this and kind of get like a better,
Right,
like
right.
idea. But like if they would claim that, then they would lose claim to like this bigger area. So like this claim just, so like this land just like went unclaimed since the fall of Yugoslavia. So it's been like 30 plus years at this point. It's just like, okay, no one claimed this. So we're taking it.
Cool. And we'll come back to El Salvador after and Latin American stuff, but I guess we're already on a good Liberland thread here. So
Right.
where's it at now? Like what's the state of Liberland?
Right.
The state
So,
of the state of Liberland.
right. So, let me see. So here. So we actually just celebrated our seventh like anniversary. Actually, not just, but it was back in April. So the country was founded on April 15th. April 15th just so happens to be, actually, sorry, April 13th, which is Thomas like Jefferson's birthday. So essentially, the country was founded on like the ideals of like the American Revolution, the American dream, the American like ideals. So what we
Mhm.
did is that we took like the U.S. Constitution and we saw where things went right and saw where it went wrong, and then kind of just like rewrote the whole thing. This is something that I'm kind of working on right now. And then we're taking this constitution and essentially coding it into a blockchain. So
Mhm.
we're going to be running our whole governance system on the blockchain, which we should be launching soon here, actually. So once that launches, then essentially, if you're voting, your ship registry, all these kind of things, the elections, blah blah blah, will all be on the blockchain. We'll even have a judiciary system, stuff like that. Now, going back to like our lobbying like efforts, about 4 years ago, we were the first unrecognized country to also recognize another unrecognized country. So, if your
Mhm.
listeners have heard about, let's say, like Somaliland, is essentially like this. It's actually like a breakaway nation from Somalia, and Somalia is basically just like this like failed state of like anarchy and stuff like that. While you have like Somaliland that has like their own currency, their own government, their own military, it's like actually stable there. They promote ideals of like capitalism and free market. So all these things that are pretty in line with our ideals and stuff like that. So we
Yeah, because
recognize them.
Somaliland was British before.
Right, right. And Somalia was, I think, French.
Italian.
Oh, was it Italian? Yeah, yeah, you're right. It was Italian. And Djibouti was Italian too. Um, yeah. So let me see. So what else? There's like so
And
many
so how
things.
does okay, so I have a question.
Yeah,
So
please.
there's quite a few of these sort of sovereign state projects. There's that oil rig one.
Oh yeah,
There's
Sealand.
a whole Sealand. There's a whole bunch of them. So how does Liberland sort of like fit into the category of all these projects? Because from what I've seen, Liberland kind of looks like the most legit one.
Right. So I would say the biggest thing that so yeah, so I think the biggest thing that would differ us between like let's say like a Sealand or I don't know if you've seen the movie like Rose Island or any of these other projects is not only do we have Somaliland that recognizes us, which just got recognized by Taiwan about a year ago, but
Really?
right, but we actually also got recognized by Haiti. We actually announced that news maybe like a month ago. So currently we do have one UN recognized country that actually recognizes us, and we're working
Haiti
it on.
Haiti recognized Liberland.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Keep going. Keep going.
So that's probably the biggest. I'll say like Sealand never got recognition from any other country. Like Rose Island, like never got it, and there's like a lot others. And also, I would say what makes us different is that we got like over like 650,000 applications, man, to become a citizen. Like 650,000, like more than that. Um,
Mhm.
but we only have like 1,000 citizens because we're really just being kind of like choosy. Like who we want to
I'm down,
like and
bro.
who we want, right? Like we want to make sure that these people are like down with our ideals and and these
I
things.
hope there's no income tax.
Absolutely not. Yeah. No, and actually, what's better than that, because it's great to have no income tax, or at least like a territorial tax system that like a lot of places in Latin America have. But what's actually cooler about Liberland, man, is that if you pay taxes, because we have a system of like voluntary taxes, if you pay taxes, then you get a token back, which is called the Liberland Merit, and then that's literally your token that you can use to like vote and stuff like that, and it
Hmm.
and essentially acts like a share in the company or the country, because all countries should just essentially be companies, and all the citizens should just be clients or customers and stuff like that. That's how it should be. So you actually get something back. And then if you don't like what's happening, or you want to, essentially live off your welfare, you could unstake, these tokens from our system at a rate of like 10%, and you could, dump on the market and make that money, but then you can't vote with those tokens. So it's like this
Okay.
like super
Let's
weird
uh let's
system.
let's come back to the crypto stuff later because it might lose
Right,
people.
right, yeah, right.
Um So Liberland, so yeah, I think like one aspect of it is getting recognized by other legit countries, and a lot of I think that's like a lot of the battle that happens around these like what would you call it, like sort of semi-legit countries, be it Taiwan or Kosovo or things like that. It's just like a game of like, how can we get enough people to recognize us that we seem legit?
Oh,
But then there,
absolutely.
and so that's like its own game, and we could talk about that. But then there's also the game of just like building the actual country itself, the infrastructure, be it issuing passports, maybe making some stamps, maybe like getting some running water and actual infrastructure and roads and stuff like that. Um, and so how's sort of like beyond the recognition side, which I kind of want to come back to. That's hilarious that Haiti recognizes you guys, but no offense, but and then like so tell me about how the actual like nation building is going.
Yeah, so essentially, before we build physical infrastructure, we really have to build diplomatic infrastructure. With that
Okay.
being said, we do have a settlement on the Serbian side, where we have, like cabins and like a town hall and stuff like that. So anytime we have a festival, we essentially do it there. So we had like a big like summer festival called Floating Man about maybe a month and a half ago, and we had like 300 or 400 people come out to this, and most of them are just like local Serbs and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
we'll do like concerts and contests and stuff like that, and that's essentially like the Liberland like cultural center. Now
Hmm.
this is right next to this. So it's right next to like this like small Serbian town called Apatine, which is right on the Danube River as well. It's maybe about like 10 kilometers south. And so we have a boat there called like Liberty. And so essentially, if you ever want to come, and check out like the Liberland area, you would fly into Belgrade, you would drive up 2 hours to this town called like Apatine, and then we have our culture center there, and then you can get onto a boat, and then you can go up the 10 kilometers and actually see the territory. So but really, if you're thinking about, well, why aren't you guys settling this and stuff like that? We do still have issues with like the Croatian like border police, um, which they're mostly on the Danube River to catch like refugees that are trying to get into the EU or and stuff like that, because that is like an EU border right there, and which they're joining Schengen soon, so they're actually going to secure those borders a little bit more. But more or less, they're breaking international law, because I mean they don't claim this territory, and they're charging us with crossing international borders like illegally. Like essentially like not getting your stamp out of Serbia and getting your stamp into X country, but we can't do that. So they've been stopping us from doing there, and we've been kind of stuck that way. But it's been a blessing in disguise, because it's really helped us just focus on just building a better image about everyone involved, like with Liberland, and doing like diplomatic stuff, trying to raise money, get the word out, stuff like that, instead of just like okay, but once we get the land, but if we didn't have any money, like what the hell would we do? So it's like this weird blessing in disguise, Vance. But I don't know, it's fun. But we really just got to focus on the on like diplomacy first.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, when I look at the Liberland Wikipedia page, it hasn't been updated to mention the Haiti thing, so I'm curious when that came about.
So we announced that news maybe about a month ago, and we've been trying to update on like Wikipedia, but I think everyone that they or I don't know, like they know that the people who are involved are trying to update it, and so it's like this weird, you know. So
Was it you guys that overthrew the president? I don't think it was the CIA. I think it was you guys.
no, it was actually sad because we signed this deal actually like a year ago, and then right before like we were like waiting to announce it, like the guy dies. So it was just like kind of
It
like
was the
awkward
previous
timing.
guy. It was the previous guy that did it.
Yeah, no, it was the previous guy who signed it.
And
So
has the I assume there's a new guy. Has the new guy sort of continued supporting it?
Um, so usually when states, let's say like sign a treaty, usually it's good for a certain period. So if a new administration comes out, it's not that they support it or not support it. The deal is essentially still
It's done.
intact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. Maybe that's why they took him out, bro.
Dude, I have to say, like, you saying it's funny that Haiti was the first country to recognize us, but it was actually very strategic. And the reason why it was very strategic is that one of the first countries to recognize Israel was actually Haiti.
Hmm.
So it's not, and we have a few people, with connections there. And so essentially just playing by their playbook.
Okay. And then Somaliland. What it says in Wikipedia was that Somaliland tweeted about discussions with what's his name about with Vit about strengthening cooperation, and I love that terminology, strengthening
Love it.
cooperation.
Yeah, no.
Um,
So if
tell
you
me,
have a
tell me
Liberland
about
pass, yeah,
tell me about Vit. So Vit's the founder.
right. So he is the president of Liberland. He used to be a politician um, in the Czech Republic. And essentially, his story was that he had a party there. He ran for, I forget what seat, he wanted to run for. I think it was like something in the parliament or whatever, and was trying to like talk about, free markets and free ideals and, all this like super, like libertarian esque stuff. And he lost. Like most people who have these ideals just lose. And so his opponent said, "Hey, why don't you just go take your crazy ideals and go start your own country?" And so, ironically, we're talking about, let's say unlike Wikipedia. So he went onto unlike Wikipedia and was looking for unclaimed land, and he found this land, and then traveled down there with his friend and his wife. They stuck a flag in there. His wife and his friend voted for him to be president, and then he abstained. That's how the story started.
And has there been any like diplomatic mission to Somaliland or other places?
Right. Yeah. No. So we do have an embassy in Somaliland. Currently. I mean,
No way.
yeah.
There's a Liberland embassy in Somaliland.
There is. There's not much action going on there, for obvious reasons. It's like, all right, like we got recognition, cool. Like we're kind of moving on. We did do some
Is it
like
in
diplomatic
the
aid.
capital, Hargeisa, whatever it's called?
Yeah, yeah, correct.
It's in
Yeah,
Hargeisa.
yeah. No, but
Gotcha.
we did do some like diplomatic aid to them. Because they had what's it called, like a crazy typhoon there. So like we brought in some food to them and stuff like that. And we have done that in a few other countries, actually, including Haiti, because it's usually how we get things started. Because this is so funny, but like let's say you're trying to get recognition for like your new country fans, okay? Like you're going to start with like these third world countries, And it's like you go there and, of course you're going to get a meeting with, like the leader because, you're probably, a bunch of, people from, like Germany or the US or Canada, a huge delegation has a lot of money. So it's easy to get these conversations with government. That's just, like it
Hmm.
is what it is. Usually what they ask you is like, okay, cool. I have no problem in, like recognizing Republic of, like Milan, podcast. But we can do that, but just give me $30 million, or 300 million or whatever. And no problem. I'll sign something right here.
Hmm.
That's normally what happens. Is that a very ethical thing to do? No. Is that, do you want to, is your new country, do you want that to be kind of like a reputation? Because all these other countries will essentially just try to like ask for more money from you.
And,
And
and it sounds bad like that or whatever, but that's really how these things work, but just at a more, I guess, nuanced scale. I think like the Taiwan thing has been very interesting to watch, and how Latin American recognition of Taiwan has sort of developed over time. We love Paraguay here at My Latin Life, and Paraguay and Taiwan have a really good relationship. And Taiwan, they bring a lot of technology to Paraguay, and they provide scholarships to Paraguayans so that they can go study in Taiwan and all this type of stuff. And then in return, Paraguay recognizes Taiwan, and there's sort of similar relationships with, I think, Guatemala and a few others. The Nicaragua used to recognize Taiwan. I
right,
think they changed their tune like a year or two ago, and so
right.
it's very sort of like, I think anyone that's interested in sort of political science is interested in these things that we're talking about, and yeah, this is just one manifestation of that.
Yeah, no, it really all comes down about money. So we didn't want to really do that. So what we ended up doing is that we started up a nonprofit um, in the States called the Liberland Aid Foundation, which I'm on the board and a founding member. And so what we
That's
did is
awesome.
that
That's awesome.
it, right. So like we would go into these countries, like these third world countries, and just like raise funds to do some kind of project. So it's like, hey, we're buying them a bunch of rice and beans, or like
Yeah,
let's
build the
say
well.
planting a bunch of trees, or
Hmm.
or like building houses for them and stuff like that. And then we do this, and then we go to the government and say, hey, look what we did for your people, you know, and try to get a motivation that way. And dealing with these countries in that way is, I would say the success rate is not nearly as good as we would want it to be, quite like transparent, but it does work. It has been working for us, and this is a way that Liberland can create a much better like reputation,
Right.
because anytime we go talk to them, they're not just going to have their hands out like, hey, okay, we want this, we want to have this conversation. It's like, oh, you guys helped out my people, cool, thanks. So it's like a weird way of that we're trying to do like politics, trying to like
Hmm.
change things, on a nation state. um, so, and by no means are we like the most like experienced bunch. A lot of us are just kind of like nerds. Like, okay, we're into Bitcoin, we want a new country, this and that. And we're kind of like learning. So I understand like a lot of people are like super like skeptical of these kind of things, stuff like that. But the cool thing about us is that we have just a huge amount of volunteers. We have like over 100. What do you call it? Like representatives around the world and stuff like that. So we have a huge team, super dedicated, and we're slowly moving the ball forward.
Hmm.
So it's not like this
No,
like super fancy, like
I do
sexy
find it
thing.
like, I think at very least everyone will agree that it's very intellectually interesting. And what I encourage people to do is to look up micronations. This is a term that I was searching for earlier in the podcast, but so there's a Wikipedia article list of micronations. You could take a look at that and sort of start to get a feel for like the history of these sort of efforts to build sort of micronations and sort of do these sort of projects. And honestly, it's like super, super interesting. There's even, I think it's in Las Vegas, like a yearly Micronation conference. Do you know about that?
I
And so I think Sealand was there, and a bunch of these other micronations were there. Microcon, maybe it's called. I kind of forget.
right. So yeah, so like the terminology of like
Yeah,
a
Microcon. Yeah,
micronation.
it is. It is called. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, it is called Microcon. Microcon 2002, a micronational summit that occurred from the 4th to 7th of August 2022 in Las Vegas, and a bunch of the squad was there. There were attendees from 33 different micronations of varying degrees of recognition, and honestly, it's just very intellectually interesting.
Yeah, no, it is very, like different stuff like that. We try to not, hang out like with that squad, for
Because yeah,
obvious
because
reasons.
like I said,
Like,
because like I said, I feel like you guys are one of the most legit ones, if not the most legit one.
right, right. And like not saying like these people are like, you know, like I'm sure like they're passionate about it. I know at least half of them are just like a straight up joke, and it's like it's just a fun time. It's just
Hmm.
like, hey, you go to a party, like, oh, I'm the president or I'm the general of this, and maybe you can pick up the girls that way. Um, but like, we are trying really hard to really come off as legit as possible. Are we perfect? No, but I mean, like, if you're trying to start like a new country, like, how the hell do you do it? Like, it's sort of like a guidebook. You saw how like Israel started, you saw how the U.S. started. I'll say like, but it's hard to get like recognition these days because like the newest state was like South Sudan back in 2013.
Hmm.
It's not often that you have like a new country. So like it is actually very, very it's almost impossible to put it lightly because you need so much money, you need so much influence. And so when you just have a bunch of people who have just like these crazy ideals of like free markets and like capitalism and and blockchain and Bitcoin and stuff like that, it's like our success, I swear, is like almost to like the Bitcoin price because like if Bitcoin goes up, we have more funds and more money to do stuff, quite frankly. And with like how, you know, with the increase of like the Bitcoin industry, we're more like, like we can go further because like people who are in the blockchain and like decentralized movement, um, really feel at home, with us. And we are a growing squad whose money is growing because like they bought Bitcoin early on, they bought Ethereum early on, they started this project, they started that project. Like
Hmm.
Vitalik and like Buterin is a fan, for example. Um, so as this blockchain industry grows, we grow with it,
So
and actually,
Vitalik has expressed some support.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Um, I would say, do you know who like Roger Ver is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
Bitcoin Cash.
yeah, yeah. So he's probably one of our my biggest, what do you call it? My funders. He's been funding us for years. You know,
No way.
hell
And
yeah.
he's living in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah, no, he bought a passport from St. Kitts and Nevis, and he actually renounced his U.S. passport.
Hmm.
Yeah. So no, he's
Yeah,
been
I'm
great to us.
familiar because one of our first podcast guests was Mark Falzone, who was a big Bitcoin Cash advocate and was sort
Nice.
of documenting Bitcoin Cash adoption in St. Kitts and the Caribbean. And he'd met
Cool.
with Roger Ver many times and stuff like that. Um, that was episode 4, I want to say.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, so I'm pretty familiar with Roger Ver. So tell me more because I actually didn't know his involvement with Liberland.
Yeah, so he doesn't help us out, like, let's say directly. He is essentially just kind of like in the background,
Uh huh.
helping to support us with like funds,
Hmm.
essentially. So he's been, he's just one of those guys that, especially early on, he was like the first investor into Kraken, like so many other exchanges and
Hmm.
projects. So like that's kind of what he does. He's just like a early stage like VC. So he's been like essentially playing that role like for us. So like that's basically the extent of like his involvement with us.
Hmm.
So and he's an awesome guy, for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, so let's just touch upon like sort of crypto stuff lightly because it is a huge rabbit hole, and then we'll sort of like transition from crypto to then talking back about El Salvador. So, how does crypto play into the dreams of Liberland?
Yeah, so without the technology, uh, that Bitcoin uses, which is on like blockchain technology, we would not be able to exist for two reasons. So if Bitcoin wasn't there, then we essentially would not have the wealth to do any of these. Because when you get a bunch of people who just made, $100 million, off of their Bitcoin, um, investment, and they want their own country, they want their own place, it's going to happen. The market is going to provide. We're essentially like providing for that. And then going back to the technology, if we want to like decentralize like power,
Hmm.
essentially put power back into people's hands, instead of like the government so much power and adding transparency and efficiency, then we're essentially using like this blockchain tech. So using like smart contracts. We've been using like the Polkadot like ecosystem actually to do these things. So obviously you don't want to get like too technical, but if you're voting or something like this, or funds are moving from these hands to that project or that, all this can be transparent and on the blockchain. So if you're talking about ultimate government transparency, this is what Liberland is trying to do. So it really answers like two different issues that you would have when you're starting, to have, or like when you're trying to start like a new country, funds and technology.
Hmm. Makes sense. And it seems like you were into crypto, like the crypto stuff led you to the citizenship stuff. Does that make sense?
Right, right, right. Because if you want to separate money and state, sure, like Bitcoin answers that, but you still have, most people just have one passport. Um, and the way I see it is that if you get a second passport, then it's essentially like having a mom and a dad. So essentially, if you want to go out, with your friends, you go ask mom, and if mom says no, what do? You go ask dad. If dad says yes, and it's like, okay, you go out with your friends. It's not your fault. Mom and dad get into an argument, but you're fine. That's that's how it is to have two passports. Now imagine having three, four.
Have you used this analogy before? Because I might steal it.
Honestly, I probably heard it off of someone else, so it's definitely not mine, but it just stuck with me. So yeah, you could totally use it.
Okay. And so, how did El Salvador come about? Or actually, but before like the background story, I mean, like, so what are you concretely working on in El Salvador in terms of the immigration agency? So you're helping people. You're currently helping. You're not waiting for the Bitcoin stuff, right? Like you're already helping people set up, get permanent residency, etc. in El Salvador.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so we've helped a few people do these. I mean, we're not like actively like marketing and stuff like that because we really want to focus on the passport, to be honest. But we still get tons, of clients just through our website and through Twitter and stuff like that. Mostly like Bitcoiners and stuff like that. Who want to come in and go buy tacos with their Bitcoin and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
what's actually cool is we have a very interesting client. It's like this German guy and like this Japanese like lady, and they came to El Salvador and they want to have a baby. You know, I'm sure, I'm sure we're all familiar with concepts of like birth tourism. I think it's just an absolute great way to not only set up, your child with a second or a third passport, but let's say like you live in the country for like a year or two, and then you can get their passport like essentially expedited because well you have traveled there. So like birth tourism is a great thing. So this is actually our first client, and I always tell people that El Salvador is one of the best places to do like birth tourism in the Americas, is because I know like El Salvador 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was like the least sexy place, in all of the Americas. Just like, why the hell do you want to go there? Who cares? But here's my pitch. If Bitcoin is successful, then this country is going to be the next, unlike Switzerland, in Latin America. Like, no, it's not Uruguay. It's going to be El Salvador. If this Bitcoin thing is successful, which means their passport is going to get stronger. And their passport's actually not bad when it comes to like visa-free access.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
quite good.
yeah, like it's not bad. You can get access to the UK, which it's a little bit challenging lately due to some things, to be like transparent. But if this is successful, which I think it will be, this country will be very, very like prosperous, and your child's gonna have a damn good passport.
So let's talk a bit about birth tourism because I find that's very popular when I tweet about it. Mexico and Brazil are pretty famous for it.
Right.
I've been meaning to sort of go through the list and do the research on every Latin American country. I think if anyone's curious, basically every country in Latin America, if you have a baby in that country, that baby is instantly a citizen. It's a birthright
Most,
citizenship.
most of them.
I think the only exception is Colombia.
In
I
Chile.
think and Chile. Okay, because I
Yeah.
think Colombia used to be, but then with like the whole Venezuela thing, they I think they pulled that back a bit. Um, but yeah, so how does it work in El Salvador? Because I think so any country in Latin America, the baby's born there, the baby's a citizen, but then the real sort of benefit or yeah, the real benefit is if the parents can then become permanent residents or at least get some sort of residency permit out of it. But yeah, could you tell us a bit about how birth tourism would work in El Salvador?
Right. So it's as simple as these other countries. It's pretty in line. I would say it's nothing particularly special. Like you don't get like an expedited like passport or anything like that. So as soon as your child is born, your child is already, like a citizen of El Salvador. Now,
Hmm.
the parents could then apply for a permanent residency, which that
Hmm.
will be expedited, and essentially approved.
Hmm.
So so they will get a PR out of that. Now, for a citizenship, I believe it takes 2 years, but they're actually working on changing the laws on that to make it easier. Which, again, that's just something that we
Yeah.
really like have to wait on.
That's that's fine because citizenship would honestly be exceeding my expectations. The real thing is if you can get residency, because then you're at least citizenship track.
It's so
Because if you have
easy.
a baby, if you have a baby in the United States for the birth tourism, you don't get permanent residency in the states. You know what I mean? Um,
Is it easier in Canada
it's
to do
just the
that?
baby. Well, the baby will be Canadian. I don't really know if the I don't think the parents get instant permanent residency. No, definitely
Okay,
not.
because I heard it's
Um,
easier to do that in
I mean,
Canada
yeah,
because like they
I mean,
want
probably, but
immigrants.
maybe, but at the same time, in any case, I mean, so if the birth tourism can lead to residency for the parents, that's like a very good scenario.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think like all of these Latin American countries like do that. I don't see a reason why they wouldn't. I know Brazil, it's pretty easily to do that. Like Uruguay and Argentina is pretty easy. Um, I think for Chile, I think the only way you can do it is that if the parent has been a resident for like a certain period of time, it might be a year or something like that.
Exactly. That's where it starts getting
Something like
tricky.
that.
And
Yeah.
that's why you want to look at birth tourism countries where there's no sort of like had to already be a residency resident, or still have to meet like rentista requirements, things like that. um yeah, so to the extent that it can be more straightforward, that's good, and it sounds like that's the case in El Salvador.
Yeah, but I mean, like with that being said, with like like a country like Chile, if you've seen like their visa-free access, it's pretty damn good. I mean, if you're a citizen of Chile, you can get into Canada, you can get into the US. Like it's as good as like a US passport. So, if you have to go there and like live for a year or two and go through like a rentista program, it could be worth it, for sure.
Hmm.
So that's why they make it, there's a little bit more like barrier to entry there. So, just with unlike Portugal, like Portugal does the same thing. Like you have to be a resident there for a whole year. Then if you have a kid, then they are Portuguese, but you have
Yeah,
to be
yeah, yeah.
living there for a year. So it's the same exact deal. And like Portugal's, essentially the only country in Europe that has that. I think there's something that's that is a little bit more difficult. But it's possible in Ireland actually, because Ireland used to have a program like that where if you just boom, you have a baby, that baby is Irish. And then they changed those rules like 20 years ago to make it a little bit more like difficult. So it's like if you have a right to be a resident, or if you are a resident of Ireland for like 3 years or something like that, then your baby can become Irish. And then,
Hmm.
you know, and that's a pretty good passport because not only do you have access to the EU, but you also have access to the UK as well. So it's like the
Yeah,
ultimate passport. But you have
yeah,
to
and,
work a
and
little bit
I've
harder for it.
Yeah, and I've tweeted about a lot of these concepts. Anyone listening could Google this Latin term called jus soli, so JUSSOLI, and that's sort of the Latin term for, I guess, birthright citizenship, where if the baby's born there, they become a citizen. But let's come back to El Salvador, which I guess is your expertise, obviously. I think one of the things that I'm struggling with when people come to me for help moving to Latin America is a lot of the program. There's usually a lot of programs. Like every country has like 10 plus programs, but
Right.
the most straightforward one seems to be the rentista, where you have passive income, be it from a pension or from like real estate rental income, basically like a renewable passive income source. And the thing is, for young people, if they don't own a house that they're renting out, young people, and they don't have a pension, young people typically don't have that sort of passive income stream in order to qualify for rentista. And so for young people, we have to sort of look for a different sort of path to residency. And so I find like the bank deposit ones work really well, because if you just have money, put it in a bank, that works really well. And then beyond the bank deposit based residency, then it's like company formation or real estate investment, and those are cool too, but it's not like the easiest. It does get a bit bureaucratic. In your experience, Joey, like as we continue to sort of wait for the Bitcoin citizenship, with the options available to us now, like what are some of the best paths for like entrepreneurs and younger people to make the move to El Salvador?
Yeah, so it's actually quite funny because you bring up, let's say, like passive income, and it's hard. So El Salvador has been super lenient on this, and it's actually really funny because like a lot of people who will come to us, they won't even have a bank account. They'll just have like a bunch of crypto. Like, hey, I have whatever, like $300,000 worth of Bitcoin here. Like, hey, can I get in? And it's like, okay, yeah, no, we can work this up. And we figure out a way and we can get them in. So they're very lenient on like the definition of what passive is. So if you at least just make 1460, so like $1,460 a month, you should probably be fine.
But passive or active?
They're super lenient. Like it's just so on law it's passive, but we've been able to get people approved that where it's just active, or even if it's just they have, like let's say like they don't even have a job, they just have like a bunch of Bitcoin, or like whatever, and that's all they have. We've been
Hmm.
able to essentially form things for them to get in. Because like the way they say it is like, all right, if you have the money, you can come in because you don't want to be a burden on the state essentially. So they've been
Hmm.
very, very lenient on that. So it's basically the one of the easiest like programs to get in. With that being said, there are ways if you wanted to come in and start a business, deposit money into a bank, or if you're on the board or like a CEO of some company, like it is so easy to get in. It's not crazy unlike bureaucratic. I would say after you get in the application, I would say it would take maybe like 2 to 3 months to get things going. So it's decently fast, and we do have some friends, so we can push your application a little bit harder. So it's pretty lenient, and honestly, like the
Okay.
best program out there when it comes to just like ease, because they
So
want
what
to
if
stay
you're
competitive.
so what if you're yeah, that sounds really promising. So what if you're say just like a Canadian American, European remote worker, maybe you're a freelancer, maybe you work for a company. Obviously you have a consistent like salary or consistent clients that are paying you, but it's more like salary income and not like dividend income. Um, is that something that could be used?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, no, it's just really funny because like on law it's passive, but we've been able to just like I don't know, like this is Latin America, so it's just like
No, I feel you. Yeah, it's all about relationships.
Right, yeah.
I don't want you to say anything that we have to edit out about squeaking things
No,
by
no,
or whatever.
no,
But
no, no.
um,
It's just like how the program runs. It's just in general, just people coming into the country, especially if like they're Bitcoin people, like the country like wants them, like it's your home, like this is Bitcoin country. So like, okay, you have, 10 Bitcoin, great, come in, type deal. Like, please, like here's everything you need to do, you know, like red carpet, type of deal. So it's not just like us having connections or anything like that. It's just like they want people to come, especially if they're Bitcoiners. Like just and there's a
mhm,
preference on that for like major.
gotcha.
So
That's very promising. Question for you, Joey. So how did you go about actually getting certified by the government to be an immigration agency? Because that's awesome to get that recognition.
right. So with you doing anything, you have to get a certain amount of like compliance. So they are very strict on foreign investment. Making sure that it's like no one's trying to like launder money or anything like that. So we had to go through a very strict compliance program in order to accept any sorts of money. So once we have that like certification, we essentially, we can accept like foreign investment. There's not a lot of companies in El Salvador outside of like banks or whatever who have that certification because it's a lot of bureaucratic crap, to deal with. To put it lightly, because they are still very slow and like bureaucratic when it comes to like any foreign investment. It's just which they are making things a lot easier. Like ever since we started the company, they've been passing laws to make things just so much easier for us. So like they're headed in the right direction. So yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And are you planning on getting down there yourself? We were talking a bit about your travel plans offline, but are you plan? I think the best time to go to El Salvador, obviously, is kind of the December, January to March, April timeframe in the dry season. That's a good time to get down there. I might be in the area around that time. Are you going to be down there, my friend?
So probably not at that time. I went back in February, and then I went last year. And last year was my first time, so I've been to El Salvador for 2 times, about a total of like 2 months. But my partner is down there on the ground, and sometimes if we have clients who are flying in, we'll get a taxi for them, and bring them in. organize
Sweet.
tours for them. If they want to know about a real estate agent,
Hmm.
we'll hook them up. If someone, let's say, wants to get a surgery done or anything like that, we can also like hook them up. If they just want to go to Bitcoin Beach and get involved in the Bitcoin community, we can hook them up. So anything people need, we can essentially like take care of. Just we're very
Yeah.
flexible. Like El Salvador is not a big country, so it's like but there's so much to do and so much to offer. There's so many like hikes you could do around like volcanoes, which is extremely popular now.
Yeah. No, nature is on point. Random question. Has Vít, the Liberland founder, been to El Salvador?
Absolutely, yeah. No, my
Yeah.
first time going to El Salvador was actually, let's say, a diplomatic trip. That was my first time going to the country, and we were actually, we came in and we were like recognized then, and we were able to like pass customs and all this kind of stuff. It was absolutely insane. We were going
No
like
way.
around the country, and we had what do you call it? Like police in the back, and police in the
Diplomatic
front.
immunity. I'm rolling with
Yeah,
I'm rolling with Joey
yeah.
next
So that
time.
was so that was crazy. So that was my first time going to El Salvador, and then I went like my second time and got like none of that treatment. So, but yeah, no, the country is absolutely amazing, and I got the opportunity to look at some real estate there, some like beachfront property, and it's so funny. It was like the locals are just like jacking up the prices, like by like 2 or 3x because they know like all these Bitcoin,
Hmm.
people are coming in. So it's like, all right, well, this house used to be like $60,000 for like this mansion on the beach, but now they're selling it for 300,000, and they know that you're going to pay for it. So it's just insane, insane real estate yields. That was
And probably
last year at
worth saying
least.
that El Salvador has been getting a lot safer recently and just sort of improving a lot generally as a country. Um, definitely becoming a big digital nomad hotspot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I felt safe going there. I will say that just like any place in Latin America, got to watch where you go and stuff like that. But I mean, like 10 years ago, it was like the murder capital of the world, basically. Now, people are, feel safe like going outside their homes. So like the country is just a hardcore like 180, man.
Hmm.
And it's just amazing to see. And I like I get it. Like if you want to be a nomad in Latin America, like places like Argentina or Brazil or Colombia like might like be like sexier places for sure. But if you are into like this whole like crypto thing and blockchain and Bitcoin thing, you need to go to El Salvador and really just like support,
Hmm.
like a country like that. Because if you don't go down there and support like that economy, like then this whole experiment is like totally screwed. Like it will not work. So like you
Have
have
you
to go
met
there.
Max Kaiser and Stacy Herbert?
I've not met them directly. I've been at a few events with them. They're very interesting, people. So I've been close, but maybe I'm not cool enough to, like talk to them. But I have a few
Okay,
friends that are like friends with them.
for
So
sure. Have you
so
have
like
you
one
have you seen Naib in person?
Naib, yeah, yeah, I've seen him in person.
That's pretty cool. Tell us a bit about the Bitcoin passport that the new initiative that you're looking to roll out.
Yeah, so this is my first time ever talking about this. So website's not even launched, but essentially what I'm doing is going to be selling on these Caribbean passports. So you have 5 Caribbean countries that are all in the Commonwealth. So they're not quite in like the Latin sphere, but they are surrounded by the Latin sphere. But these are countries like St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, Dominica, and St. Lucia. And essentially, they sell their passports. So people who want to get a second passport for, well, many reasons that could be a whole nother show. What my company is going to be offering is essentially selling these passports for crypto, and we're going to be the first in the industry to do this, like directly. But with that being said, Um, I'm still talking with lawyers and stuff like that. We have a few clients ready to go. So once I get the company all operational, we're going to do a test client and make sure that the government is all cool, that they accept it, and then boom, I'm in business because they've been very skeptical about, let's say, like taking Bitcoin directly. But
Hmm.
we found a way that we can do it that they should be okay with, to make sure that this
Hmm.
Bitcoin is clean and all these kind of things. So it's actually kind of an experiment. So I'm not going to give out the website yet, but if you go to my Twitter, which is Joey Youssef, JoeyYusef, I will be announcing the details there, maybe in 1 or 2 weeks or something like that. That will be live for maybe one country that we're going to test out. And so you can kind of get on a waiting list for that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What was I gonna ask? Oh, there is another person that has been doing something similar. I think. Do you know about Katie the Russian? Kate the Russian?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so I've met her one time. So I was actually trying to do right because like El Salvador CIP, once the passport like launches, I essentially want to connect with, like people like Katie the Russian or like Nomad Capitalist or, like these type of people so that they can essentially offer on the passport and then we'll essentially just process all this, kind of work, more or less like
Yeah,
on the back end. So that's
that
what
makes
CIP
sense.
is really for. When we started, we didn't really want to be like kind of like a, on a like client or like retail side like facing. We more or less just wanted to deal,
Right.
with people
Because
like that.
I struggle with that too
Like
because
it's so hard dealing with
obviously
so many people.
we're we have an audience, and I'm like, should I get into the actual like immigration agency side of things, or should I just partner up with people? And sounds like Joe, you're going to be my El Salvador guy, and
Yeah, no, we could handle anything for you, man. If you come to, there, we could organize a taxi to pick you up from the airport because, there's a lot of not
and
so
I
good
mean even not
taxis
just
there, for
me, and I'm
example.
down. I'm down to do it, but I mean also my audience.
Right. Yeah, no, like y- right. So they can just go to elsalvadorcip.com and email at us and like, we can set everything up. If they want to take tours, like anything they want to do, like we can handle basically anything. Just help out anyone coming to there because not only do we want to build up our brand, but we want to, build up the whole brand of, like this Bitcoin country and stuff like that, and really sell that dream of just like hanging out at the beach, working on your laptop, you know, buying tacos with, so like all those kind of things, like just like selling like this Bitcoin dream. It's here, it's now, like what
Yeah.
are you doing? Type thing.
One question. Maybe this is too much inside baseball, but do you know how many immigration agencies are certified by the government of El Salvador?
So here's the deal. Before this whole Bitcoin thing, Vance, um, no one was interested in moving. Everyone was more or less just interested in leaving. They all wanted to go to Mexico. They all wanted to go to the US. They all wanted to go to the EU. All wanted to go to Canada. Like no one wanted to come to El Salvador because it was a really, really dangerous place. So when this Bitcoin law passed, we were essentially like the one of the first like agencies to come on board. And I can only think of one other, and I'm sure there's like a few others. So when it comes to being certified, uh, that is essentially in relation to the passports. So obviously, there's no agencies that offer the passport because the passport is not legal. But there has been a few of these agencies that have been doing like the digital nomad visa and stuff like that. So there's a few out there that have started to, come on board.
What do you see as like the future of sort of the industry? I think what you're doing with Bitcoin and everything is part of it, and I think this is just an absolutely gigantic wave. We're really just in the first couple innings remote workers and go where you treated best and all this type of stuff and internationalization. Do you have any philosophies or thoughts on where things are headed in Latin America and globally?
Yeah, I would say people are realizing that they can get treated so much better somewhere else. They can reduce their taxes. They could, just have a better, like lifestyle. If that is in Chile or in Paraguay is like super like a hot place to go, like I need to go there. Um, but it's definitely a trend because not only is the world becoming a lot more global, but I think the whole catalyst of this was really, this pandemic where people were just saying like, hey, don't come into the office, work from home. And people are just, chilling in, I don't know, let's say like Minnesota and it's cold outside and it's terrible and it's like, and it's
Hmm.
expensive and it's like, hey, I
Hmm.
can just go down to like Brazil, pay 20% the cost and be on the beach, and just that idea just waking up in their head and, just like, why am I here? Okay, my family is here, my parents are here, but why do I have to be here? And boom, you get on a ticket, fly down to, you know, some warm tropical place, and you're just living the dream for like one fifth the cost. I mean, why not? Like, you'd be crazy not to do this, and you can reduce your taxes, depending if you're Canadian or if you're from the US or, you know, um,
Hmm.
so obviously talk to an accountant for that. But, it's just, it, it's just stupid if you're not doing it. Like, just unless like you really care about your family or if like your family has like health issues, you have to be there. That is totally understandable. But if you have the freedom to go and just work, you know, um, in Argentina or something like that, why would you not? I'm sure you would have a much better like dating life down there compared to like the US, in some aspects, and it's just a whole new life. And also like it's such like an opportunity to grow as well because I know
Hmm.
like I'm originally from the US and people just like only know of the US. Like they barely know anything outside. It's like you got to get out of that mindset. Like you have to go out there and explore, talk to other people, experience different cultures, learn Spanish, learn Portuguese. These are all things that help you grow. And, this is where like the world is going. Will I say
Hmm.
everyone is going to do something like this? I don't think so. But I think a large minority of the population
Hmm.
will definitely be living this lifestyle. And that's a huge opportunity for um, any company that is serving, like that niche, because like that niche is growing every single day. I have so many friends, like saying like, "Oh, I wish I can do that." I'm like, "Well, why aren't you doing that?" That's a good question. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's funny you said Minnesota. I had a client call yesterday with a couple from Minnesota, and they want to start spending their winters down in Latin America. They were first thinking about the classic Florida, Texas, and then they said, you know what, like the U.S. is obviously in decline. We should diversify internationally a bit, and they were they're just very pragmatic about it.
yeah, you really have to be that way. Like you can't put emotion into any of this. It's just,
Hmm.
hey, this is the logical thing to do, and so let's go do it. Like at least for me, it's really I'm like that simple. Like obviously, there's so much emotion, in getting up, leaving, moving to a new country, burning the boats. A concept we talked about in the beginning,
Yep.
and it's powerful. I mean, if anyone who's listening has never done that, it is the most just. I've grown so much ever since I've done it, and I don't know. It's just one of those things you just got to do.
Yeah, absolutely. One kind of quick last question about El Salvador. Maybe you could just bring us through. I'm actually looking at a map now. So Santa Ana is a well-known sort of backpacker spot. There's also San Miguel, kind of on the other side of the country. Do you have any favorite spots in El Salvador? And could you tell us maybe a bit more about some of the best spots in the country for digital nomads, expats, retirees.
Right, right. So I've only been there twice. I would say probably the biggest places that I loved and that I hung out was definitely El Zonte.
Hmm.
That's kind of where like Bitcoin Beach is. The waves there are absolutely insane. It was my first time I've ever tried to surf, and it can be quite like dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So that's really cool. Also, Libertad is a
Hmm.
sweet like beach town as well. So I mostly just hung out in the beach areas, and then of course like San Salvador.
Hmm.
I've heard really good things about what's that area called? Actually, I'm gonna pull up a map. So there's like some sweet places in the south of El Salvador. There's like a few like islands that I've heard that are pretty cool to check out. That's kind of like right next to like Honduras
In
and
that
like
Gulf there,
Nicaragua.
so you got like
Right,
Isla Zacatillo,
right. And I actually heard
Baros.
that China came in and bought one of those islands, and then but I don't know which one, but I heard they bought just like a whole island down there. But I've heard some good things about those islands and like that area. And I think um, that area is where like Bitcoin City is gonna be. I forget like the actual like coordinates, but it's supposed to be like generally in that area because they want to be kind of close to like these three other or sorry, these two other countries. Um,
You can't just leave us with a mention of Bitcoin City. What's that gonna be all about?
dude, just like the passports, I'm waiting, man. I'm waiting.
Okay.
I had a friend actually travel down to where like the Bitcoin City is going to be, and
Hmm.
just like camp out there. Like it's crazy. Like I'm just like hearing like all these Bitcoiners like these like crazy like Bitcoin maxis just like waiting for Bitcoin City, just like traveling to this area and just like camping and just like hanging out. I'm just like you guys are insane, and because right now like there's nothing there. Like there's nothing there, and it is an absolutely ambitious plan that between you and I am quite skeptical of. I mean, just like, hey, we're gonna make this like brand new city and it's gonna be tax free and it's gonna be funded through like Bitcoin bonds. And it's like, okay, where are these Bitcoin bonds? Where is this? So there was a lot of hype, and so we're just waiting, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's funny. 10 years ago, people were waiting on the latest shoe drop, and now we're waiting on the latest passport drop.
Dude, every day I've been, like we've been talking to various people in the government is asking like, hey, when's this gonna happen? When's this gonna happen? And it's like, oh, next week, next week, next week, next week, next month, next year. And so we get crazy answers all the time. So it's just like, all right, I don't know when the hell this is going to drop, but like when this drops, like it is going to be the hottest passport.
I believe it. Yeah, I almost. Yeah, it's definitely good to be a first mover because that's gonna go fast.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, Joey, dude, it's really cool to hear about someone that's kind of doing things on both sides of the pond. You know, you got your foot in Latin America, and then you're calling in from Serbia, doing the thing with Liberland. And it's really exciting to see some of these new movements that are coming up that have only really been made possible by technology, by crypto, by remote work. And like I said, I think it's really early innings, and I think that this conversation is sort of exemplary of that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think we both are in an awesome niche and a growing thing. So, yeah, no, life is honestly amazing. I know, like everyone's like so worried about the world and the state of beings, but I'm just like, dude, this is just like the beginning. Like this like shake up, like it can be crazy. It could be, like deadly for some, it could be horrible for some, but like new things are coming. And if you know where those things are going, then you and your family are going to have a great life. So get your second passports, get your second residencies, like pick up some Bitcoin. And of course, this is not financial advice. Get on the remote work because it is essential. Like it's one of those things that's going to instead of like being trendy, it's going to become essential to do.
This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast, joined today by Joey Langenbrunner. He's the Chief Sales Officer at El Salvador CIP. He's a representative of Liberland. Joey, thanks so much for joining us, man. This was a really interesting discussion.
Absolutely, man.
And what's the best place that people can reach out to you?
On Twitter,
Spell it out for us one more time.
JoeyYusef. Joey Yusef.
Thanks, Joey. Have a good night.
Cheers.